Hello there, we've not met yet. I'm Greg Gomez, here to present a special Igniting Change podcast. We're breaking the mold a little bit with a remix episode featuring some of our fellow Cubies. In these episodes, our incredibly talented team will dive into the latest in tech topics and industry news, from groundbreaking innovations in AI to the newest trends in app development and digital transformation. We're here to cut through the cyber noise, serve up a hot take, and keep you entertained along the way. Whether you're a tech enthusiast or just curious about what's shaping the future, these episodes are packed with insights that you won't want to miss. So sit back, stay curious, and let's ignite change together. Hello all, this is our inaugural little session on just talking about technology. So we're Three-Sided Cube. I'm Greg, I'm head of product here. We've also got James, our head of design. Give us a wave, hi. And we've got Sam, one of our iOS developers.
Hello.
So we're a little bit late to the party talking about WWDC, but we had some thoughts about it. And as an app development agency, it affects our very existence, to be honest. So it's quite an interesting one. The term that you'll probably hear come up quite a lot in this session is Sherlocked, which we will explain at some point when that comes up. But it is definitely an interesting WWDC and one that if you are an app developer or if you're interested in developing an app, it will probably behoove you to listen to some of the things that we have to talk about. So I wanted to open up the floor if anyone wanted to start with a highlight that they had from WWDC.
I feel like I'm going to need the term Sherlocked explained to me as well as part of that. But no, I mean, good. The obvious headline, right, was Apple Intelligence. That was like the big thing that they saved for last. I can't remember if they did the traditional Apple call it one more thing. I don't think they did.
No, I don't think
but
they
it
did.
But it had that energy to it.
Yeah. Everyone was like, okay, come on, when's it coming? You know, there was a lot of hype around it. It did take a while for them to get on it.
But to be fair, I think because they were aware of the fact that everybody knew that Apple would be stepping into that space, they kind of did at the start. They were like, right, we're going to talk about our platforms first, then we're going to talk about intelligence. So they did kind of front it like a few minutes in. They were like, don't worry, guys, we'll get to it.
It was pretty well known that they were going to, and the details of exactly what they were going to announce was pretty well known before the event. But I think when you saw on screen some of the little demos of how they were going to implement orchestration, that is a huge one for me. That orchestration piece, probably come back to that, but just where you saw how they were going to implement it, it came to life in a way that, you know, even just knowing the leaks and stuff, it still managed to be quite high impact and surprising. So, yeah.
I always feel that with Apple leaks is for a little while I tried to avoid them because I think that you can look at the leaks and you can see like quantitatively what's going to be happening, but they always like they show it right. You know, they're selling it right, but they always show it in a way that is far more exciting and feels like it has far more potential to it. I remember one that stands up maybe in a different way is when the notch came to the dynamic island for the 14 Pro, I think. All the leaks were, oh, look, it's got hole punch cutouts. Yeah, it does. But then Apple comes on and go, hey, look, but they're fun hole punch cutouts that have functionality. Like there's always that disparity between the leaks and the actual thing.
So funny. It's all about, completely how it's done rather than, what it is. I can imagine writing the user stories. I know they don't work that way, but just how we work. If you were able to write that on a feature list and then go and investigate it, just it's not at all how we work quite a lot of the time, and how obviously that would have all come together. Probably from the result of loads and loads of exploration. Yeah, just interesting.
Yeah, I would love to know how their teams collaborate because it's a big old project. And and Apple Intelligence is such a good example of when everything is kind of coming together there. So like a ton of teams at Apple must have had to have come together to get that all cohesively working across all of the system apps and services and some behind the scenes stuff, and then across not just iPhone, but all of the platforms. Like that, I'd be really interested to know how they coordinate that across such a massive swathe of company.
I do think this, for me, will be a pivotal point in usage of AI, like Apple Intelligence, which is a form of AI. They're very keen on their terminology, but I think for me, where it's different from others is the access it has to my personal information. I don't think there's any other corporation that I would trust with that level of access to, where I am, my calendar, my emails, my messages. So, it the fact that they already have all of that, for me at least, as an iOS user, it's very effortless to just enable that and then have that intelligence on top of all my personal information. The examples they showed of sort of like find out where that restaurant was that I said I was going to go with my mother, like, and it goes through the messages, it finds it, like that is real utility, that is like making life easier for people. um
It is
but
seeing as well, like just what you had on your screen. If I'm not wrong, I think that's the case. It's just kind of able to see anything that's in the viewport. See, that's a really interesting one in the back of your head, like when you're on your device or whatever. Just thinking about the fact that I guess that is then available.
Yeah, so they released a paper about that recently, didn't they? Of how they take what's on your screen, they convert it to text, so it gets interpreted to text, and then that's how a language model can, understand what's on your screen and then, do stuff on it. It is really interesting, and it does open up the paradigms for what you can do with an app. I think it's really interesting from an accessibility point of view. I'll be really excited to see what like enhanced accessibility features they can offer. If you don't understand how to use an interface, you can just ask Apple Intelligence, "Hey, I'm not sure how to use this interface. How do I unmute myself, or how do I, like order an Uber or whatever?" Like it could be really, really compelling use cases for people that either have accessibility issues or just don't struggle to understand an interface, for example.
That personal context thing, around, I mean, I think that's what they were calling it, is personal context, basically just having access to all of you, and like you say, like trusting it with all of that. I think that's really what feels like it gives it its superpowers. Like ChatGPT is fab and has so much power to it, but to have one on device that understands you just really gives it superpowers. And it's an interesting thing around saying like there aren't many companies that you'd want to trust with all of that data. I was chatting to somebody the other day and I was explaining this and how excited I was about it, and they were like, "Oh, but I'm not sure I like the idea of it having access to all of this stuff." But actually, I mean, the way it's been implemented is that a lot of it stays on device. Most of it stays on device. It's no different to the device having that data in the first place. It's just being manipulated and used in a different way.
Ways, yeah.
But I think that's going to be an interesting one for Apple to communicate to people, to have people trust Apple Intelligence. It feels like the sort of thing that people be like, "Oh, I don't want it knowing things," and switching off Siri and stuff.
It feels like the kind of stuff that it's got to have some interaction and move your data to like externally to be able to do some of that stuff, just because of that's the traditionally what would have to happen, right? So it's going to feel like that must be the case.
Yeah, and communicated to the enthusiasts via WWDC. They spent most of their time with Apple Intelligence talking about personal context as their USP and privacy as their other USP, because it kind of has to be. Apple's always been about the privacy, right? But this is it was such a big focus because it's important that it's a focus. And they spoke a lot of interesting stuff about it. And how it works, and they've broken ground on new privacy practices, and they've made tons of it open source. And so to the enthusiasts watching WWDC, we have that context around how the privacy is going to work. It's how they communicate that to everyone who don't want to watch a 2.5 hour dev conference.
Yeah. Oh, so that onboarding onto, there are lots of aspects to onboarding people onto this feature, right? It will be interesting to see the detail and nuance of how they achieve that, like from the trust point of view, but also from knowing what it can do. So, it's already something that plagues Siri a little bit, like knowing the extent of what it can do. And I think I've certainly lost a bit of trust in Siri because I'll ask it to do something and it's like, here are the search results for the thing. It's like, no, that's not helpful right now. I've got my phone in my pocket, I'm doing dishes. I just want you to tell me what the answer is. Um, so I think the discoverability of those features will be critical. Like, how are they going to make that stuff known to people? Um, and apps as well. How if our app implements some sort of like some sort of feature that uses Apple Intelligence, like how do we communicate that to people that, hey, now when you're using Apple Intelligence, you can interface with our app, and these are the command words that work, or these are the sorts of information that you can request from our app.
There needs to be so much hand holding, I think, at the start of that.
Yeah.
There'll be a point where you kind of just trust it and are happy to make some guesses. And I wonder as well, like how well it will be able to recover if it doesn't know the precise intent that you ask for. So whether it will have some sort of logic for if you ask for something, it to do something slightly a different way to what it expects, it being able to interpret that and sort of like reroute you a little bit. That, like, if it can do that well, I think people just be comfortable like taking a punt on, like, oh, I think it could be able to, do this. But yeah, it's just whether, I guess, talking about intents, like, we as developers, I think we'll have to set those intents up for each app to make sure that even if the command can be understood, like, we've got everything that we need in place to service it. And I
So
think that might be the bit that suffers at the start, is like how many developers properly make their intents available. But
yeah, from the discoverability thing, I think that's so right about Siri. Is it's got to regain people's trust so that people are happy to try asking it things that it might not have been able to do for the life of it, but now can. I think you're right. It's got to handle things that it still can't do gracefully so that people still trust it to give it another go. And I think in terms of discoverability throughout the rest of the system, there's some stuff there that aren't, that they're not power user things, right? So one of the things is notifications on the lock screen. If you have like 100 messages from a group chat, Apple Intelligence will just automatically give you the lowdown of that whole thread. So stuff like that will just be surfaced without people necessarily having to know it exists. And then I think one of the interesting things around Siri and regaining people's trust is they've made quite a clever decision to make it look completely different. So the UI for Siri is now not that little circle at the bottom. It's now a swoosh, like edge of the screen, does some cool warping on the UI, lots of colors. I think making it look different is quite a sensible move to make people feel differently about it. So
Yeah.
some real robot voice generator voice effects as well are definitely needed for that, that full futuristic rebrand.
And the betas are out right now, and I think if you don't yet have access to Apple Intelligence, you still get that old Siri UI. So they're very much making it that differentiating thing. Is it's like old Siri bad, new Siri good.
So let's imagine we're in a world where Siri's amazing. Siri can deal with all the normal questions that you ask it. You trust it. And people are just basically casting spells almost, aren't they? They're just saying, I want data from here and I want you to send it over there and just sort out my life. you're in a world where your app's interface might not be as important as it once was, because ultimately people want to get stuff done, and maybe your app, has some data that's needed by something else. And you know like, oh, Siri, book me a ticket to go see a film. I just want it to be a film like the ones I've watched before. And you've got an app where all your films are and stuff like that. And, you know, that kind of situation, it does raise an interesting point of like, how important is like your visual user interface going to be in a world where these voice interactions are sort of, it's just going into your app and fetching the data. The term we've used is like, are the apps going to become bags of functions, that just Siri rummages around, finds the function it needs, or the feature it needs, and gets the data, and that's that. Do you think that's a direction we're going to go in, or do you think that's a bit dystopian?
It'll be an interesting change of focus potentially as to what the app, where the focus of the app is in terms of the UI and the UX, and the functions that it provides manually, not through AI. Yeah.
You'll probably want orchestrated experience at some point to defer back to you for certain choices and certain tasks that you want to do. And I wonder whether it's those specific ones where people commonly want like a lot of agency in their choices. That may be where we can spend more time to make that experience better. Because the best
Do you think that
experience is
sort
always
of
going to win.
experience will be in your app, or will that be some sort of component that it just displays that bit of the app to make the choice?
The yeah, I think you won't go into the app to access it. I think it
Yeah,
could be contextually,
yeah,
say you've got I want you to order like this. I want you to order this product to this location that I booked for like Airbnb or something like that, and say maybe there's a few more actions in that chain, and then like one of them is the one that you know you want to say it comes across that product isn't available, and you want to like make another choice or something like that. That could be
It
the little module that it pulls up to
mm.
get you to make a
it
decision, for example. But there's probably better examples. It's just yeah, I think it's that small module, small tasks kind of thing.
so as generative AI kind of came into existence a couple of years ago, well, started coming more and more into
Mm.
existence. There's this whole discussion, and still is, about, okay, we wanted AI to do the boring stuff that we didn't want to do, but instead it's doing our art and our literature.
Mm.
It's almost a little bit like that, right? So we want, and this is kind of in our court as app developers.
Mm.
This is in our court. We want Apple Intelligence and any other systems to be doing our admin tasks that might not be all that fun to do in apps, whilst we don't want it to be like, hey, watch a movie for me on Netflix and I'll go and do something else. Play this mobile
Summarize,
game.
summarize June 2.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
We want it to be doing our admin tasks that
yeah,
aren't maybe all that fun. Like,
yeah,
please check all the hotels in this city to find the one
yeah,
that's cheapest and closest to the things I want. You want it doing the boring shit and not, doing our art and watching our films
yeah,
for us.
yeah.
and we have steer on that because we're app makers.
It does require a bit of realignment on like what success looks like for an app, right? Traditionally you might look at time in app, right? How long are people spending in your app, and the actions that they're taking in your app. I'm sure there'll be ways to trigger action, trigger sort of events so we can track, usage, but of like orchestration attempts or orchestration usage. But it is a bit of a paradigm shift in terms of like how we expect people to use our app, right? Like there will obviously be apps where content is the reason you open the app, and you're doom scrolling in your app or whatever. That's still going to be a thing, right? But yeah, there is still this part of apps where you're doing stuff in them or you're getting data out of them where their interface may fall to the wayside a little bit, and it is an interesting thing from a company that has like a strong brand and they want to sort of their experience to come across as theirs, like how do you convey that? Does it become about the tone, of the response, or I don't know, it yeah.
I wonder how, like, if that's orchestrated through Siri, for example, whether like the experience will attribute like any of the, say if it uses 3 or 4 apps in concert or whatever, whether it will tell you that at the end, and maybe that is some crumb of comfort to those brands that are delivering those apps, but
That would be
yeah,
interesting information to know as an app developer, right? What apps are commonly orchestrated
yeah,
alongside
totally.
mine? Where are people using the information they get from my app? Like, where
Apple
is it
Apple's
going
never
to
going to tell
next?
you that. Apple's never going to tell you
Yeah, I know. It is a
that.
shame, though, isn't it? Like, because that is potential gold dust there, understanding the workflows that people are leveraging with your app's information.
For sure.
They'll know that, and they'll probably use it to come up with like, oh, like you know, 50% of people ask for this command. They're using Airbnb with, I don't know, this like pet app or some weird thing, and then there's some strange service there that they discover through that.
Yeah. So, Sherlocked. This is the time to explain it.
Okay, I'm
So,
listening.
so Mac OS, back in the day, before, so Finder is like the Windows Explorer for Mac OS. Before it had search, there was this third-party app called Sherlock that gave Mac OS search. So it was Sherlock, Detective, Find, Search. That's where it comes from. Apple loved it so much that they basically created Spotlight using Sherlock features and killed Sherlock overnight. So that term is basically when macOS loves something that a third party developer does so much that they decide the ultimate form of inspiration or acknowledgement is to recreate that as a first party thing. So I saw a few examples of that in the WWDC stuff. So I use 1Password personally. I don't think I'm going to renew it. Like when this new release comes out, like the password manager that they're releasing seems really good. And then with the Apple Intelligence features, I don't think I'm renewing Grammarly either. Like the Mac OS feature that they had there around like reorganizing your text and rewriting it in tones and you know like all of that seemed amazing. So I think that that trend could accelerate with some of those Apple Intelligence features of them just being able to recreate functions that they see. If they have more insight than we do into how Apple Intelligence is being used and that isn't being shared with us, I think there's a lot of potential for them to just co-opt that stuff
Yeah.
and just turn it into first party data or first party information that Siri can provide. When like the closed ecosystem, the closed garden thing becomes even stronger with sort of these box technologies, especially if they're not sharing any of the sort of usage insights that may relate to our applications. So kind of puts you in like a really weakly defended position, as far as like coming up with cool IP and stuff like that.
Yeah. I mean, we can still, so, if you've got data coming into your app, say in this
Mm.
chain of things that it's doing through orchestration, you can at least know what the data is.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
depending on privacy practices of any given app, right? And then you can get an idea of what it's being used for and what app it might have come from. But it's harder to do that preserving user privacy than it would be for App Store
Mm.
Connect analytics to say, hey, your
Mm.
app's being used amongst these others. We won't tell you what
Mm.
for, but did either of you were either of you around at Three-Sided Cube when we were doing Alexa skills?
Yes.
Yeah, because
Yes.
that predated me. I'm interested because, you know, talking about how you get your brand across in a black box, in not having, you know, any visuals. Alexa skills was kind of that, though it was never, you know, like crazy popular. How was it done there?
Well, in that case, you have to. They did marketing around popularizing. You can ask Alexa for this skill, so you are invoking, you know, brand name skill to get Alexa to do it. So um, that's as much as the brand comes through, really, and then it would deliver the content, right, that you
There
wanted from
was,
the app.
yeah, I think casting my memory back a little bit because I had to pivot quite quickly from like UI sort of visual design to being on a sort of voice like conversation design project and researching everything that Alexa was capable of. I do remember that some of the skills had like recorded audio and could have a bit more of a distinctive like brand voice to them. So I wonder whether that could come back around as a bit of a. But again, we'll talk about Siri, so you're not going to be able to necessarily like play that proprietary sound from an app through that. It would be mediated through Siri, right? So it is still different there, but I do wonder maybe there is some aspect of like sound being part of that experience. Because at some point, Apple are going to have to think about that brand attribution piece, and takes away a big incentive for a lot of organizations to create apps if they are just silently providing a service.
Yeah.
So
I mean, we are talking, to be fair, in the future, albeit not necessarily that far in the future. But right now, the iteration of Apple Intelligence that we've been shown, and what we'll get immediately will probably be even less than that. But the kind of intents that you can provide are quite limited around what sort of thing, make phone calls, you know, the basics. Can't remember them off the top of my head. And then in terms of linking apps together, it's seeing what's on your screen in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the apps has to be there for it to start doing the orchestration stuff. So the kind of where we're at right now is not where we're talking about, but it's definitely not far ahead. And I think actually I'm really interested to see the kind of focus shift that happens in terms of the experience we provide and what becomes important and unique when we're building apps.
I do like the idea of like less time looking at the screen and being able to just do more with my phone, you know, just talk to it and stuff like that. I don't know if either of you watched the reviews that Marquez Brownlee did on the physical, like the rabbit, and I can't remember the name of the other one. There was a couple of physical
Oh
AI
yeah, what was it
devices.
called? The one that flopped really bad, the badge
yeah,
thing.
they're both
Yeah,
great.
the
Oh yeah,
humane. It was the
Oh, the
rabbit and the
AI
humane.
pin. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah. Both of those, he mentioned one thing that those reviewing those made him realize was how much he loves the screen and how much a screen is right for certain interactions, you know. So I definitely don't think it's going away, right? Like there's stuff that you just want to parse information in that way, and you know, I don't think the big slab of glass in our pockets is going away anytime soon. But I do look forward to a reality where I can just do more stuff without having
Yeah.
to, you know,
And
beat my
it's
head
that
above
thing
it.
again, right? Is we get to steer this. We're part of this, and we want to see the admin bits get done by
Yeah,
Siri
yeah,
and not
yeah,
us, and the fun
yeah,
bits still get done by us.
yeah.
yeah. There's a nice there's something nice in the end outcome maybe being it choosing the right mode to get you to interface in for each point of the journey, and that being quite fluid and changeable, and yeah, us kind of being able to optimize when it is a sort of visual screen based task that you need to do to really spend time on what that experience is. I think that could be really nice. I really liked, Greg, you shared that link in the Cube Slack channel. What was
General purpose interfaces.
Yeah. So that was great. I really liked some of the little provocations, the little concepts that they did, and just sort of showing that thing where it scans the fridge and comes up with the little interface that are just really contextual to that moment. But that stuff like that still will need thought, and just being able to think about how you can make a UI really useful in a moment. That seems like a cool challenge that I'd love us to be able to engage in more.
Yeah, so we will link to that article because it is a great read. There's some great examples of how artificial intelligence can sort of like enhance traditional user interfaces, what they're calling sort of general purpose interface. One of the examples is, given Apple Intelligence might know everything about you and what apps are doing and stuff like that, if you regularly on a Friday night go and purchase some bevies, down the pub, it will just automatically put you in a focus mode on your app on your phone, and there's just two big buttons: call and Uber. And it's just like I do like that kind of idea of like hyper contextual modes and it knowing me well enough to know when it should put do not disturb on and who should and shouldn't be let through do not disturb, and not having to micromanage those states and stuff like that. Like going into recording this, it would just know to just put my do not disturb on.
Yeah, I had to put my do not disturb on 10 minutes in when all the Slack notifications started coming through. So when they were talking through all the Apple Intelligence stuff, it's so cool. There's so much exciting stuff here, especially around the app orchestration. Siri not being incompetent is really exciting. There's some great stuff. And then they kind of started showing more of the traditional ChatGPT type stuff, so the writing tools. That's really useful to have it right in the interface of the app that you're in rather than having to go to ChatGPT, paste it in, copy it back out, all of that stuff. Cool. When they showed the image generation stuff, though, I think my little "you can't just slap AI onto everything" skepticism flag started waving.
Yeah, like I agree. So the approach they took up to that point of like, here's us sprinkling, some AI magic in points of the operating system that make sense. It's not an, AI app or, it just, that made a lot of sense. But it does feel like there's maybe like, I don't know, maybe it's becoming Jacob's law, like that thing of everyone seems to be doing an AI app. Like, Google, the new Pixel phones, they have like an AI studio app and it is just image generation. They all seem to be working on that as a thing. I really struggle with the use case for that. Like Genmoji, and I know we'll get onto that in a minute. Like I can see a use case for Genmoji, but just like random image generation, I guess it's cool that it's more accessible. You don't need to pay for a DALL-E or a Mid-Journey subscription, but let everyone access it. But I can't see like why.
There are a couple of things that brought me round to it a little bit. So initially it was like, like you say, everything we'd seen was thoughtfully integrated throughout the system, user experience stuff, really nice. Then the image generation, it was like, okay, but why would I want to generate an image inline wherever I am? Why would I want the Image Playgrounds app? I think, calling it Image Playground as well kind of suggests this. It's kind of there for fun. So in the same way that in iMessage you have access to like memojis and stuff where you can create a little character of you and send stickers and stick it all over the messages and everything, you now have inline Image Playground, which I think, so you can bring in people from your photos into the images that you generate. So you can go, they're like, oh, please can I see my friend V as an astronaut? And I think that is a really nice use case of it for group chats and messages as just a fun thing. But they also show it.
Yeah.
They show it in those productivity scenarios as well, where it's like,
yeah. That was the bit that was pretty spurious, right? Like
yeah,
the playground bit. Very here for it. It's a bit of a extension of being able to put stickers all over your photos and draw all over them and stuff like that. But you can do some more interesting out there stuff, I guess. But yeah, the actual like working it into the productivity stuff, the slides.
What
the
was
notes.
the example they gave of like a productivity?
one off the top of my head is you can use Apple Pencil on iPad to circle a hand-drawn drawing and have it turn it into an AI generated thing. Fucking
Right.
cool. That's really cool.
Yeah.
But like, is
Yeah.
that useful?
Yeah.
I feel like I do need to accept though that some things are allowed to exist just for fun.
Yeah,
Not everything needs a
I think
purpose.
that's a really fair point, man. Like a lot of our day-to-day life is like user stories, business value, user needs, and maybe that is a user need to just fucking have some fun,
Yeah.
like, and that is probably something, I should reflect on.
But Genmoji is an
Genmoji,
interesting one.
yes.
Greg, I feel like you should start this.
So I'm probably in the middle of the spectrum here. I created whatever the previous, what were the avatars that you could create?
The memojis.
Memojis. Yeah, I created one. I would use one for a laugh, So I could see like situations where it's quite funny to create like a very specific emoji, in a particular style and stuff like that. But also, a lot of the time, I just won't bother. A lot of the time, I use like the keyboard autocomplete to just give me the
I use
emoji I
that
want.
all the time. Yeah.
So I'm kind of torn. I think when I need it, it's nice to have it there. But yeah, what about you guys?
Yeah, I've got some big feelings about it, really. Yeah, I think I had quite a visceral reaction when I saw it, and I think it comes from just knowing the existing, the backstory of emoji and how that is like a language. It's like carefully considered. There's a committee that votes them in, and there has to be cases made for the new emoji to join the set. But I think there's something nice about that's shared language, and I don't think this the Genmoji really will displace that. I think it could just add to it, and you sort of customize it. I think it was probably a bit weird that it was one of their first things that they thought to do as part of like their AI features. Yeah, I feel like a grumpy old man on that one. I just want to preserve what's cool about emoji, and I think I don't know. There's something about it all feeling very fragmented and people just communicating in like. It's even with Cube Slack or whatever, we have our own custom emoji, and that that's a shared language that we've all created. But
yeah, and we use them for that. We kind of learn what they mean to each other, and we'll go through little fashion periods of this particular emoji is getting a lot of use at the moment.
That's it.
And I get it as well, and I love like you say when the committee votes in new emojis, and then they get released in the OS updates, and you see 0.4 is coming out. What we've got a little old man on a bicycle. Amazing, let's go. And I kind of do love that, but at the same time, like Greg, I use that autocomplete for the emojis a lot when I'm writing a message and just want something related to what I'm saying. I'll let it pick my emoji out for me. And sometimes I swear there was an emoji for this really specific meal that I am cooking right now.
Yeah, where's the risotto emoji?
Yeah, sometimes I do just want a really specific emoji, and I like that you could just have that generated on the fly to use it. And again, a really cool thing that they've done is you can pull in people from your photos, so you can have yourself and your friends as emojis, which is really cool. But there is that it changes the emoji game, guys. It changes the culture around emojis. There's maybe you wouldn't have a fashion because once you've generated an emoji once, It's only you that has it. If someone else uses the same prompt, they might not end up with the same emoji. It's yeah.
One of the things you talking through that, one of the things I think we might lose a little bit is using the limited set of emojis to express stuff that isn't quite right. It's a little bit sideways. Like I always used to love the weird use of that moon one with a face to like express a certain emotion that probably wasn't directly in one of the normal faces, but it's just a kind of there's a specific usage of that that's just really cool. I think we'll probably maybe lose stuff like that a little bit.
Maybe you could compare it though to pre-emojis with little ASCII emojis, the ones that you'd carefully assemble from brackets and letters and strange characters. That you have those like more recent ones. I feel that you get on like Discord of like table flip and everything, which is quite fun. But also like way back to Nokia phone era, using the letter O and a 7 to be a salute, whereas now there's a salute emoji. It's like another little paradigm shift, isn't it?
Yeah. I'm definitely just being old.
So I think that those are the big points, right? Was there anything else that you guys wanted to cover that you'd seen from WWDC?
So there was obviously some interesting things around iOS, tinted app icons. I mean, we've spoken internally a lot about how we feel about those. And there was just a lot of nice quality of life things and RIP third-party calculator apps for iPads. Personally, one of the things that I really enjoyed nerding out about is Vision Pro. So I know this is last year's WWDC thing, but this year they brought it to more countries, including the UK. And given that first major update for Vision OS to Vision OS 2, to go through, and you get that interesting thing with these new products. So I remember it for Apple Watch. WatchOS 1 worked way different to WatchOS works now. The buttons on the side did completely different things. They had their initial vision of what you might want to do with an Apple Watch. So, turning the crown would show you forwards and backwards in time, and you'd get friends when you press the side button. It's really interesting then seeing them watch people use it and shift the OS drastically in those first couple of versions as well. We kind of saw that a little bit in Vision OS 2. The interface works a little bit differently. You get to home with gestures instead of pressing the button on the top. So we're seeing those shifts from them seeing people use it.
I am very, very keen to try that out. And for me, from a productivity point of view, like having big screens and virtual screens, like I can't wait till that's a little bit more affordable and accessible, because I do think like from a productivity point of view, like that would be pretty awesome.
Like that ultra wide Mac virtual display thing from this year. Oh, that's so cool.
Give me some of that, man.
Yeah, just working on a MacBook, but having your screen like as wide as the wall in front of you. That's really cool.
It's working lying down on your bed and huge
exactly.
screen.
There's some really cool stuff, and from a nerdy little dev perspective, I can make apps for the 3D space, which is something I've never really done before.
Yeah.
We can use exactly the same tools as we use for iOS. We can compile the same code into a Vision OS app. And suddenly you get to see the work that you've done hovering in your room in the cool glassy effect. There's like very nerdy excitement from me about Vision Pro.
Are you planning on getting one? Sorry, go on, James.
No, go to talk about Vision.
I was just going to ask you if you're planning on getting one.
I have a Vision Pro.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. Next time I'm in the office, I'll bring it in because you should definitely try it.
I really would love to try it.
It's been really interesting using it because it kind of does everything, right? There's a lot there. When they gave the price at last year's WWDC, they then went, but guys, I mean, if you bought a TV and you bought a surround sound system and you bought a laptop, it would be way more. Like they did that. But you can do all of those things, and it's been interesting working on it to see if that is a nice thing to do, whether that's comfortable. Watching movies on it and having your cinema screen like 100 foot wide.
Yeah.
It's been really interesting to just try different things, see what's comfortable. Having that kind of like thing that you might have done on your phone, on your MacBook, but going, oh, should I do it on Vision Pro? Or will it be more of a faff than it's worth, like strapping it on and everything?
Has anything stuck from that, Sam? Like,
Has anything stuck?
Has anything stuck in terms of you'll go back to it to
Yeah.
continually go and do X or Y?
Yeah, so I've found that the biggest thing I do with it is media consumption, movies and TV. Like you say, Greg, like being able to lie down or whatever angle you are, and just have your screen, and not to need to be in, you know, the living room opposite the TV on the sofa, but to be able to be in bed or in the garden or wherever, you know, and have whatever size screen, or, you know, staying in the hotel here in Bournemouth for the office, being able to still feel like I have decent tech facilities in my hotel room that just has a little 32-inch monitor in the corner.
So how was it working? Could you get around to, like,
so
does that feel good enough?
Working's interesting. I've tried it. I haven't tried it too much for coding, but I decided that maybe I just need to make the font a little bit bigger. But for coding, because it's so like reading text focused, it was maybe not that comfortable for extended periods of time. But it's basically completely replaced my personal Mac, which I would use for browsing the web, booking stuff, watching TV. Like it's replaced my personal Mac, but for serious Xcode projects, maybe I need to get used to a little bit more. But first impression was like,